everyone. Thank you so much for being here. This is great. I love seeing all the faces that I recognize. Well, thank you so much for being here. It's a really exciting day because we are wrapping up season 2 of the Founder Mindset. And what a season it's been. It's been an incredible season where we talk to founders about the human experience of being an entrepreneur. You know, those super high highs and the crazy low lows, and then the impact that they're making. So you guys are nodding your heads. You're like, I hear you. I hear what you're saying. So this is what we cover in the podcast. And what we also came to realize through the course of the season is that it really takes a lot of support to get these founders going and to make sure that those incredible ventures that they're building are successful. So we thought for this final episode, why don't we talk to some of those innovation leaders that are the people that support these founders as they grow their company. So why don't you join me in welcoming to the stage our panelists. So let's start with Terry Rock, CEO of Platform Calgary, Shelley Kuipers, Managing Partner of the 51, Amreesh, Khanna, founder of OraQ, and Martin Toner, Managing Director, Institutional Equity Research, ATB Capital Markets. Come on up, guys. All right. Does everybody have a microphone on their chair? Great. Okay, I've got one extra microphone here. Should I hand this off to you, Crystal? Yeah. Okay. Thanks. And I've got this one. Are we ready to go? It's off. Oh, look it. You guys are making it work. Thank you to our team here at Platform Calgary. Okay, thank you all for being here. Let's start right off the top with telling me a little bit about the company that you represent and really how you support founders. And you know, Terry, I'll start with you because really you're the first stop for entrepreneurs when they're like, hey, I've got an idea and I'd like to do a business.
For a lot of people, we are the first stop, and we built this place to be a first stop. To often say when I give a tour that the biggest thing we brought to Calgary was a front door for innovators to walk through and just immediately get supported with a community, with connections to capital, with connections to people who are going to help them build their team, and connections to customers. And so with over 600 tech companies now as members of Platform Calgary, and 160 partner organizations in the ecosystem to help them. This is a really vibrant community that is there. And then we also have programs that really take people from idea through to just in the early stages of scale. They can find that here through our programs. I just want to point out that just over there is, in another room, Calgary Catholic Immigration Services is offering a 10-week newcomer entrepreneur training program here at Platform. So that's the kind of thing that's happening all the time.
All the time. Thanks for that, Terry. Shelley, let's go to you next. Tell us a little bit about the 51 and how you support founders.
So the 51, we are focused on activating capital so that we can invest in women-led, co-led companies. And we assess that by taking a look at the ownership inside of that company. So do women have a meaningful or equitable stake inside of the business? So that's how we define that. And we kind of help founders in a bunch of different ways. So there's our capital, obviously, and then side by side our capital, we've got our LP community, which is quite a large community. We're close to, I think, 325 LPs across Canada. On an individual check basis, we are 90% women's capital. So that means that we have this massive community of women that can really roll up their sleeves and work with the founders as advisors, joining their board, and then the broader community. So if one of our founders has an ask, we can go out to the community and say, this is what they need, and then we can tap into our broader community of more than 35,000 across Canada, which is great. And then side by side, the fund, we have our not-for-profit, which is called Movement 51, and we do programming, like Terry, where we focus on developing women-led founder businesses and getting them investor ready. So everything from, how do I do the math, to my cap table, to my pitch, to my financial model, how do I really get prepared to go out and raise that capital? So we've got a whole bunch of different ways. Oh, and I think the other thing I will add is in our community of 35,000, we say we have a bit of a built-in market. So all of the founders that we invest in, they have the opportunity to distribute their products to our community. And so we have, our our community kind of has like first access to products that our founders are developing, which is really cool.
Which is super cool. Yeah. Thanks
Try
for that,
to do
Shelley.
too much.
Yeah, you guys are doing a lot, no question. And then Martin, let's go to you. ATB. Tell us a little bit about how ATB thinks about supporting founders.
Yeah, great, thanks. And I'm in the capital markets group. I'm an equity research analyst. I cover growth and innovation, which is mostly tech companies, all publicly traded companies. ATB is well known for supporting founders, supporting entrepreneurs. I think the grassroots efforts that we have are a little more well known than some of the more sophisticated capital markets and financial market solutions that we provide. We've been lending to the tech sector for a long time. We've started lending to smaller, earlier stage companies more recently, and we've supported the crypto industry for a long time when some others didn't. There's a private equity arm, there's a venture arm, and there's all the capital market solutions that we have that help slightly larger companies, especially as they're getting prepared to enter the public markets.
Absolutely. And you support funds like the 51s Fund too, which is really exciting.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. So Amreesh, tell me a little bit about what these supports mean to you as a founder. How do they change what you do and how you even think about being a founder?
Yeah, no, I think something that I share often, with having these supports nearby, like I'm a dentist by my initial day job before I became a tech startup founder, a precision health platform we have in dentistry. But without having these supports and individuals like who I'm sitting here with today, I say often, I don't know if I would have taken the plunge, right? Mm-hmm. And so one of my first journeys was through Alberta Catalyzer. At that time, it would have been, early 2022 when we were still in a virtual-only world at that point, but programs that, are here and many advisors and people that I've met here through Platform that started to show someone like me that, okay, hey, you have an idea, you have, validated that there's a problem, you created a solution. Now, how do you build a company out of this? How do you raise capital? How do you go pitch? Like, what do you need to do when it's a whole different world? So, yeah, I think all these supports, whether it be capital, whether it be mentorship, advisory, a venue like this, all this stuff is so important for founders.
It's huge. I just want to pick up on what you said there, Amreesh. You may not have done this. You may have not taken that leap to go from being a dentist and having your own business to being this entrepreneur and creating this whole company called OraQ. That's massive that you didn't do this. Yeah. And because of these supports.
Exactly. I think, you have to be immersed in an ecosystem like this and then have the people around you that, you can have conversations with and ask questions. And, I think we're very lucky and blessed here in Calgary that we have people that want to help and want to build this. And, for someone like me, great, I could go talk to plenty of dentists, but, how many dentists have gone and done something like this, right? So I needed to get out of my little bubble and talk to other people. And, there's a lot of familiar faces in the room here that have helped me at some stage along the way where, I've said, okay, here's where I'm at, like, how do I do this next, or what do I do, or any advice you have, feedback you can give, all of that would help me maybe go to the next step, right? So
Absolutely,
yeah.
Absolutely. Martin, I can see you almost wanted to jump in there.
No, it's a great story.
It is a great story. There's no question. When we think about the founders and the supports they have, not only are you important when it comes to supporting the founders themselves, but you're also instrumental in supporting the ecosystem that needs to exist to create these companies and to make sure they continue to grow and maybe even continue to stay here in Calgary and in Alberta. So maybe, Terry, we'll start with you again. If you can talk a little bit about how important it is to nurture the ecosystem itself.
Oh, well, what's interesting, I look at this, there is an ecosystem, whether you try to make it one or not. There is, all of the things are going to be there. In the regions where that's really well developed, typically that would mean, I think of it as turns of a flywheel, meaning multiple times people have built companies, sold, and now they're reinvesting. And there's just this understanding about how capital flows and what a good idea is and who a good founder is and the reputation kind of flows. This is all in the book, about the Rainforest, Vic Wang's book, talks about how Silicon Valley is like this. And there's not a lot of institutional support for their ecosystem. It just is. It is an ecosystem that works on its own. So when you're early stage, which Calgary still is, we've had tremendous growth, but the reality is like the density of the amount of resources that are here is smaller than other places. Mm-hmm. So it's essential that when an entrepreneur is building their business, that there's as little friction as possible, as fast a connection as possible to the next milestone that they have, or organization that is going to help them, or person that's going to help them. That's why we built the National Bank Investor Hub. It's like, okay, there's not a ton of investors in Calgary, but imagine if in kind of one place you could talk to as many investors as possible in as short a time as possible, and just figure out where you are and then get moving on. And so everything we've done is about that, is focused on an ecosystem. We say faster connections between talent, ideas, and capital. Mm-hmm. And honestly, Calgary could be, like, that's an area that we could be the best in Canada. We could be the city where we're the fastest at getting you where you need to go. And that takes collaboration and trust and all those things, and I think Calgary kind of has that. And so it's a natural advantage that we should double down on. And then what's in the ecosystem? Capital, talent, and customers. Mm-hmm. And the talent breaks down into the founders, the people who work in the companies, and then the mentorship and the advice that's around that. It's not that complicated, but all of that needs to flow quickly and be in abundance in your region.
Absolutely. Shelley, I want to ask you the same question. When you think about creating an ecosystem to support founders, how do you think about that at the 51?
I'd say, like, and I'm going back to Terry's comment maybe. You know, when I got my start in tech here in Calgary, that was 89.
It was at Marac. We know that.
Yeah, it was 89 at PSI, and then I joined Marac in 1990. Okay. So 1990. That's how many decades it takes to build the ecosystem. Mm-hmm. And I think there are kind of like intangible characteristics that need to be in place for that to happen. So I think number one, you have to have an economic environment that incentivizes capital to flow and for ideas to flow, because I think ideas are capital too, right? It's like it's your human intellectual capital and it's your financial capital. So you have to have an environment where those things can flow. It can be very dynamic, and I think Alberta has always been that. We've always been entrepreneurs, regardless of the industry that we're in. Whether it was farming or energy, now tech, and now tech is going into every industry. So I think that's kind of like part of it. I think time is one. I think that there's these intangible characteristics that need to be in place, and I think that that's something that Alberta really has to hold dearly and really fight for, is to make sure, you know, that we have the best tax environment, that we set up, you know, capital incentives, and I know we keep asking for that over and over again, but I think we really have to, you know, foster this entrepreneurial community that we've built and keep building it. I think the other thing is that we've got an environment where anybody can approach anybody in the environment. Like, you know, the worst thing that can happen is somebody will go, no, I'm not going to help you. But I think everyone in Calgary and Alberta and Edmonton is extremely generous with their human capital. Financial capital is like kind of like another step. But if I look at the 51, we've got like our C words too. Like we say capital, capacity building, and community. So one of the things that we've done at the 51 from the start is we said you can be an investor today or you could be one in 10 years. It doesn't matter. Come and join the 51. You can be a founder today or you can be an aspiring founder. Come and join the community. So we've really tried to be, you know, community-led, knowing that this is a long-tail development. It's going to take another decade, another 2 decades to really ultimately achieve the potential of women-led companies receiving capital. So I think that's the other thing too, I would say, is like community. And I think, again, we're really strong at community. We're really strong at entrepreneurship. And I just think, you know, it's the best place to build a company.
Nice. I agree. Thanks, Shelley. Martin, I want to ask you about this too, because ATB has partnered with a lot of companies in Calgary and in Alberta. I'm thinking, of course, of Quickly, for example, which is one of the fintech companies that we've also invested in at Thin Air Labs. Those partnerships are essential for getting these companies off the ground and for allowing them to do what they want to do. How critical is it to have these partnerships in the community, whether at this early stage or even later in the stages that you talk about?
Yeah, I think it's big, especially in an area like fintech, where there's this sort of morass of regulatory and competitive moats for companies to need to try to get around. Yeah, it's key.
It is absolutely essential. So Amreesh, when you hear about these ecosystem developments and supporters, is there anything in the ecosystem that you think is super awesome, that you love so much, or is there something that you're actually looking for that you haven't even seen yet?
I think one of the things that Terry again said was like how the ecosystem is kind of just, it's there, right? And like how it's going to be there in whatever capacity. And something interesting that you found when you compared it to, the Valley, like I've been down to San Francisco in the Bay Area, and you just feel this energy of like innovation, excitement, like people are talking about it, they're doing something about it, and it's encouraging and motivating when you're a founder, right? So I think what I see, sure, we're a smaller city and a smaller scale, but we still have that. Like we still have events, we still have places you can come network, places you can connect with people. And, as you said, human capital, I think, is very generous in Alberta, because that's where we can have these conversations with people that are willing to share their experiences or help you along the way. So to me, I think that's been something that I think really drives the energy. And then as a founder, again, you need that energy to be motivated and keep motivated, because it's not easy what we're doing, and you have a lot of ups and downs along the way. So when you can have that when you're down and be able to get boosted back up and know that somebody's there, and maybe you're talking to somebody and they've had a similar experience or can help you, with a question or something, that's what gets us picked back up again and keeps us going.
Absolutely. We talk a lot about that at Thin Air Labs too, that sometimes it's just about taking one founder and connecting them with another founder that's just 6 months down the road from them, or even 18 months down the road, just to give them a little bit of that, oh, you know what, I've seen this, I know how to help you. Or even something like this podcast, where people are listening to the podcast, other founders are listening to the podcast, and they're like, I'm not alone in this. Other founders are feeling this way.
Maybe I can share one other thing. So, I was as a founder, like you go through these crazy ups and downs, as we call it, and sometimes you're just like, I don't want to see anybody, and I just want to curl up and try to figure out how I'm going to deal with this or where I'm going to go. And I had a hard week last week, and I was with Ian from KPMG had invited me over to an event that they were having with just a bunch of founders. But it was exactly that for me. I met another founder there. And, we've been talking about a lot about our journey, about, I keep saying this in my company, like what got us here won't get us there. Like we're evolving as a company, we're growing, but that means the team's evolving, and some people are going to change, some people are going to come, some people are going to go. And it's hard sometimes, right? You care about the people, you care about what you're building. And then I met this other founder who was just, maybe 6 months, a year ahead of where I was. And she was talking about I went through this exact same thing. And all of a sudden I was like, whoa. Okay, it's not just me. I'm not it's not just me dealing with all of this. There's somebody else, and it gives you that boost, right? And
Absolutely.
So that's the thing, having this, and they say the last thing you should be doing. I was reading something on another startup thing about is don't curl up and shy away. Go to events like this and talk to some people, and that's what keeps us all going and keeps the ecosystem churning.
Absolutely. Amreesh, I'm thinking of all the moments that I've had in the podcast studio with founders. And when I just asked them, what was it like to go through what you've been through? And we talk about a specific moment. And people are getting emotional in there. It's a really intense moment for them because it's so hard doing this work that you're doing. And Terry, I can see you nodding and you're like, yes, I understand this.
Well, I guess I would say I'm entrepreneurial, but I would say, we committed to buy this building, this project, a lot of money 4 months before the pandemic, and there were many moments where I was like, why exactly did we decide to do this? But no, and then I just think about in a given year here, we will see over 500 founders through programs, and then our membership is over 600. And 5 years ago in Calgary, when we were really getting serious about this journey of building this initiative, the people we talked to, whether they were an investor or someone from industry or a founder, one of the most common things they said was, I wish the ecosystem was more connected so that I had a community where I could just go somewhere. And that just was the validation we needed, because those serendipitous encounters where you're going to meet someone that has exactly what you need at exactly the right time. You can't precision engineer that, like precision health. You can't precision engineer your social network. But you can tilt the odds so that it's more likely that you're going to get what you need when you need it. And that's what Calgary is, and I think that's we're seeing that now at this place, but in other places in downtown Calgary as well. So yeah, that's my biggest piece of advice always is don't do this alone. Like it might feel lonely, but you don't need to do it alone.
Absolutely.
That makes sense.
And Shelley, for you at the 51, you've created an entire community of women founders and their supporters and their investors. How essential is that to these women continuing to be founders and continuing on that journey of building those companies?
Yeah, and it goes back to the point that you just made. I think, we talked about our limited partners, we talked about the broader community, but that peer community of founders inside of our community, so our portfolio of founders, that's super important too, right? So having the peers, and same on the alumni. We do the founder programming, and that alumni group, they graduate from a cohort and they're best friends for life, right? They've got their WhatsApp group, and everything is being shared. And sometimes we'll hear something that's being shared, and we'll be like, wow. But I think, I don't want to get all DEI here on the panel, but I think what we're really trying to do is focus on an economic and a financial opportunity. So if we look at, the percentage of capital that's being allocated and how we can grow that pie and invest in others and more and make that pie bigger, it's just a bigger upside financially for investors and for founders. So, we are investing where others aren't. We're investing in an asset class that's overperforming and underinvested in. But I think, going back to your comment, the community is everything. And we've had pushback over the years about having a community. We've made our business complicated because of that, because we have hundreds of LPs. But we're doubling down on it. We're going to stay the course.
I love it. I love it. What about you, Martin? When you think of creating ecosystems and supports, what comes to mind?
Yeah, we have a slide that we share that compares the return of capital from two companies, Microsoft and Apple, to all of the venture capital that is raised in North America. And those two numbers are relatively similar. So to Shelley's point about underinvested, these ecosystems, and it goes all the way up to OpenAI. That includes all those big guys too that have not yet gone public. The amount being invested is really, when you compare it to those other two companies, it's a return of capital, it's a recycling of capital, and you could easily see it be larger. One of the things we see, is just that capital has sort of found Canada, and even though the struggle of raising capital can be kind of crazy tough for lots of small companies, one thing we see is that capital has found Canada, and it's in part because of some of the winners like the Shopifys of the world.
For sure.
And the venture capital industry in Canada is growing, but the capital that is coming here from other parts of the world is also helping.
It's helping for sure. Well, that leads us nicely. We are sort of in January here. It gives us an opportunity to sort of look ahead in terms of innovation and where sort of the money is going, where the interest is going, where the capital is going. Do you want to tackle that right off the gate there, Martin? What are you sort of focusing on at ATB in terms of innovation for 2025?
Yeah, sure. So 2024 was another year of large cap companies doing better than small cap companies. However, the market has broadened out in the sense that small caps have kind of recovered, and it's all amid a period of effectively enterprise IT spending austerity. Spending growth has been weak because a lot of these corps are concerned because they saw inflation, they were worried about their profitability, and that all trickles down to venture, where 2024 we saw continued deterioration in the amount of capital that was raised by venture stage companies. It rebounded in Q4. I think there's a tremendous amount of enthusiasm, in part created by a change of government in the US. That starts with stuff like crypto, but it also extends to sectors like fintech, where regulatory hurdles were becoming significant. And there's a lot of enthusiasm that's gonna kind of open the floodgates here, and we're gonna start to see those venture capital fund numbers start to turn around and start to go up again.
And I know one of the sectors you were also really excited about that we talked about earlier was AI.
Yeah, I mean, we have a focus on that, in part because I cover for Bitcoin miners, and they're starting to rent their space out to companies that need data center capacity for AI. And the interesting thing about that story to me is just how economically intensive it is. It involves power, it involves electrical equipment, the chips are massively expensive, you have to build these things, you have to approve these things. And so that's gonna create a lot of economic activity, and we can see it bending just like economic growth in North America in total. It's right now still a US story. These companies that need to invest in data center capacity are very comfortable investing in the US, but there's no reason Canada and especially Alberta can't participate.
Absolutely. Amreesh, OraQ, huge AI component to it. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, what we're trying to do is redefine dentistry. We call it we're the only clinical AI solution in dentistry today that standardizes a comprehensive patient assessment. And what that means is everybody here sees a dentist and have probably got a story where one dentist told you one thing, another dentist told you something else, and you're always worried, is my dentist selling me something I don't need? So that's the problem that we're tackling, because if we're not creating value behind our recommendations effectively to a patient, well, they're not going to say yes to it, which means I got a chair empty in my dental practice and we're not making money and our patient's losing out on care. So how do we solve that problem? From a precision health perspective, we do risk modeling, predictive analytics, and then also give patients back full transparency and ownership of their oral health data. So you can leave your office in the palm of your hands with a risk and wellness profile, understand your treatment plan, all these types of things. So that's what we do as a company. What I'm really excited about with AI is, really the journey that we're on has been one that is, deep in integrations and data, and try to pull in data from electronic medical record systems in the dental space and all these things to get the right data. But the future ahead of us that we're really building is the whole power of like your digital dental twin. And you'll hear about this in precision health and medicine, your digital twin. How can we employ therapeutics, treatments to patients in a digital, omniverse, as NVIDIA calls it now, and be able to show you truly, like the amount of times I got asked this question from a patient in my chair is that, hey doc, can I wait on that crown until my insurance turns over in 6 months or whatever it is? But, I don't know what's going to happen if you're going to go bite on something, 3 days from now and break your tooth, right? But if I can help answer that question with data and analytics and really give you that powerful answer to that question, I think that's pretty cool. And so where that goes with medical integration and really being a part of like the overall health picture. So that's what keeps me excited and what we're really, the journey ahead of us still. Yeah.
That's exciting. Shelley, when you're looking at 2025, what are you really excited about in terms of sectors?
Health, for sure. So again, we're trying to invest in things that we believe, we say we want to invest in the world we want to live in. And so we use that to kind of guide our decisions. So health is a key area. We have made several new investments in health, in particular women's health, which is really exciting. I can't wait for them to be announced, which is great. And then, work, like what is the future of work, especially in the context of, women? How do women want to work, right? So there's talent marketplaces, there's the future of work, there's enterprise platforms that support different models of work. We're really interested in that. Clean tech and sustainability, that continues to be an area. And then like my kind of like favorite area that I hope we start, more incorporating more in our next fund is the whole area of wealth. So, women are standing, on a kind of the precipice of a massive wealth transfer. And so what do our financial services need to look like with this new customer really driving the decisions, whether it's my consumer spending or it's my, my banking services or it's my wealth, like what do I want that to look like? And so when we look at the advance of this new customer being, women in charge of all of this wealth and this capital and this influence, what do we want from our financial services and our financial system? So that's like the other area that I think is really interesting. And then I think all of that needs to be underpinned by AI. So, when we're looking at companies, there needs to be an AI strategy, like everywhere. It needs to be pervasive.
Wow, that is super exciting. I can see why you're really excited about that.
Yeah, I'm always excited.
And Terry, when you're thinking about 2025 and sectors of growth and what you're focusing on at Platform, what are you thinking of?
Well, we're sector agnostic as an organization. Our 100% focus is what are our entrepreneurs trying to do and how can we help them get there. With that said, there's some interesting things about Calgary that I think we underappreciate. So I'll just talk about a couple of those. In the construction tech, property tech space, there's some really interesting things emerging around robotics coming in, getting involved in AI that we've done now 2 years in a row, a prop tech showcase. And that has actually led to us opening our eyes into other opportunities there might be. And then you look at what's happening at SAIT with their housing manufacturing innovation lab that they have, and that I think OSIF is one of your sponsors they invested in. And you look at, okay, we have some of the most sophisticated robotics for additive manufacturing happening and being explored how it can be used at SAIT. And how can that be applied to construction and housing supply? Calgary has a chief housing officer now to try to get more housing. So there's something there that I think is really intriguing for our city to go on. And as we talk to the industry, there does seem to be a lot of factors that point to this is an area that Calgary actually could emerge as stronger than other places for a lot of different reasons. I'm excited about what happened at Bow Valley College last year when they opened their new esports arena and all of their esports production programming. So during Innovation Week, we partnered with them. They had a game night here. There was 20-some studios that were exhibiting, and like 400 people were here looking at the esports and e-entertainment world. And again, like I don't think we had that on Calgary's bingo card as like a thing that we were going to excel at, but we are, and there are people being trained to produce esports over at Bow Valley. If you haven't seen this place, it's mind blowing. So you start to add up some of these things that aren't just like the things that we're known for, and go like, how is that happening? Well, some of it is that the people power behind our energy industry, they're really smart. Mm-hmm. And they're really interesting people. And they have interests outside. And so you'll find people, like we have this really interesting, if you go on Kickstarter and search Calgary, you will see a whole bunch of people building games and stuff out of Calgary. Like Calgary has this whole nascent thing. A lot of those people work in the energy industry, and this is their fun thing. And so I don't know, like there's something there that I think is really interesting that's emerging, and some of these things that aren't necessarily center ice. But on the other hand, like the world, the basics that we have in place, the fundamentals that we have in place, to make our province one of the places for AI data centers and the strategy that our government is going after with that, I think that's pretty exciting. We have gone from kind of off the map from the major tech companies to now they're really paying attention to our city. That's one use, but they're looking at us differently. We're on the map on the global tech scene in a way that we haven't been before. And I just think that just opens up new horizons that we haven't really explored. So I feel like 2025 is like a year where it kind of, we consolidate the gains that we've had over the past little while. We're still, even though venture in Canada was slow, it continued strong in Alberta. And so that's just the story, is that we've built from this strong and mighty base. We continue to go. 2025 it's a new ball game. I think we got new opportunities on the horizon with all this stuff coming together. Okay, I can throw one more thing out there.
Sure.
Because I'm so focused on founders, is like the tool sets that are available now for really smart people to build businesses with small teams, that capital efficiency, and the massive productivity you can get from a small team. That's also super exciting. And that's something that we'll be watching here as we look at new ways we can help those people. We're trying to figure out, like, at the front end, sometimes you might be able to compress the front end a bit by having really capital efficient small teams that are just really equipped with amazing tools to build faster, iterate faster, and not sure how that rolls into programs or anything like that, but it's definitely worth paying attention to.
For sure,
Sorry, lots.
absolutely. Thank you for that, Terry. The one thing I want to talk about as we start moving towards the end of this conversation is impact. At Thin Air Labs, we get really passionate about supporting founders that are creating meaningful human impact, and that's something that we always look for, whether it's whether we're investing them or supporting them with our professional services. So I wanted to put this to you, Shelley. I'm going to start with you. It's like front and center on your website, making an impact. We want to make an impact. At the 51, how do you think of impact?
So there's kind of like the investing impact matrix out there, like BDC has one. We're really trying to look at it a little bit differently in the way that we're starting with the cap table. So we're looking at how can we drive impact through the cap table. So the founder and the founders are on the cap table. They're typically, from our perspective, underrepresented founders, so they have a meaningful stake in a company. And then we are bringing, largely women's capital onto the cap table. Again, that's, largely underrepresented in venture. And so for us, creating this net new value or this net new wealth on the cap table that wasn't created before, that's kind of a key metric for us. It's like, you look at Bobby Reset at Virtual Gurus, and it's this, you see the opportunity for her. Like, she's created this value on the cap table for herself. When nobody would take a bet on her, and now she's going into her Series B process, it's like really inspiring, right?
Absolutely.
And then we know that there will be the impact from that net new value. So the founders will go and they will turn around and they will invest in the next founder, right? Those team members, like, their lives have changed, right? If the company is successful, so what are they going to do with their capital? And then those investors, again, those investors are more likely to turn around and take another chance on another founder, invest in another company. So that knock-on effect and that flywheel of this net new value creation, and then the impact that they will drive through their new capital and their new wealth is really exciting to us.
Sure is. Amreesh, when you're thinking about impact and creating impact, how do you think of it?
I mean, firstly, of course, impact through the innovation and the company that we drive. Like, how do we better our patients' health, really drive impact through oral health specifically, and where I specialize, right, as a dentist. I think, at one point, if we talked 10 years ago before I got into this whole world, I always thought that, the more patients I could see, the more patients I could treat, that's how I was going to make an impact. So did I want to own multiple practices? What did I want to do, right? But now the thought that, hey, we could be anywhere in the world one day and there could be a dental practice that has OraQ, and the impact that that's driving on a global scale, and that's powerful. So that, I think, first and foremost, we want to do that. And I think, community is so important, and being able to give back in whatever way, I think is something too that I think, how can I contribute back to this ecosystem to keep the flywheel going and help? If I'm a founder that's 6 months ahead than somebody else, how can I lend an ear or a piece of advice? And one day when we become a big company and sell and exit, and how can I invest and come back to other founders and support the ecosystem in that way as well too?
I love hearing that, Amreesh. Thanks for that. What are your thoughts on this, Martin?
Yeah.
ATB and impact.
Yeah, specific to banking, I think banking in the space done well, there's a bit of a give before you get type of approach. And for a bank like ATB, I think that is all the grassroots programs that they have, entrepreneur centers, organizing events, speakers, and even though those actions might not create profit tomorrow, but you're helping to build companies of the future that you're going to be able to going to help sustain your banking business over time. We try to live that in the capital markets group, and job number one for me is covering publicly traded companies well. But I think of job number two is just helping startups, helping companies regardless of where they are in their journey.
Absolutely. And even sponsoring podcasts. Thank you very much.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. As we close our conversation, I on the podcast, I always ask as we start to wrap things up, if you're going to write a story for your company or for yourself as a founder or as an investor or as an ecosystem supporter, how would you want that story to go? So Terry, why don't we start with you?
Once upon a time, really, when we think about our mission is to make, our vision is that Calgary is the best place for anyone to start and grow a tech company. And we want to see 1,000 companies over 5 employees that average 30 employees over time hit the ground here. And that story is going to be one of people like Amreesh walking through the door, reaching out, being referred in, and taking those first steps, but at scale. Like, I believe we have the opportunity here as a city to, I think about this. Here's the end of the story. You're at the Calgary Folk Fest in 2030, and every stage is sponsored by a tech company, because it's so ingrained into our community that there's just this feeling that we need to be in all these interesting places. We've already got at least one tarp at in the Calgary Stampede in the chuck wagon races. I think it's things like that are going to be the real turning point. That's traditionally been banks and oil and gas companies that have done that kind of a thing. Our city, at the core in the future, is going to have tech companies and people who are building companies kind of just embedded in its DNA. And that's the journey that we're on right now. And we hope that many of those first steps happen right here.
Love it. Shelley, when you think of the 51,
I
how
love
does the
that.
story go?
I was actually thinking over the holidays, I was like, what if the 51 had a chuck wagon? And I was
Chick
like,
wagon's been done.
And
so.
yeah,
It has been done.
okay, I didn't know that. Okay, I'm not saying that, but I was like, that could be really cool. We could have a really interesting, unique experience. But our end of the story, it's not the end, but is that we want to activate $2.5 billion in women-led capital by 2030. And we've gone through a process to do that formula and that calculation. We've done the math. We've done the math on, what the incremental, 1% of women's VC capital does to the economy. So we're mapping out like this economic case of what's possible, but we are explicitly inviting, women to get involved in this asset class. And to write a check, and to become founders, and to build the future that we want to live in. So we are gunning for that $2.5 billion. That's our goal. I might be dead. Or, I don't know. No,
I hope not.
absolutely not. No, it's going to happen by 2030.
I love it.
Yeah.
2030, here we go. Martin, when you're thinking about ATB and the story for ATB and the continued efforts either in venture and the capital markets, what are you thinking about?
Yeah, I think we need to offer solutions up and down the stack from grassroots level all the way to IPO, support this ecosystem, with whatever they need. For me personally, my franchise, I think that Canadian public market investors need to sharpen their pencil on tech. I think U.S. investors need to discover Canada as a source for good publicly traded technology companies, and the companies themselves need some help too. So that's kind of our mission every day.
I love it. Amreesh, we have to end on you because you're our founder, and it's called the Founder Mindset. Let's first talk about how you see the story going for OraQ, and then I want to talk about you personally.
For OraQ, I think as I shared before, for me to be able to look out into an audience like this and have many, if not all of you one day being like, I know this, I got my OraQ wellness profile in the palm of my hands, right? Like that would be super cool. And really know that it's something that drove you to better your health, make a better decision, and trust your dentist around what they were doing. So I think, that's really the mission that we're on, and to be able to do that anywhere around the world.
Amazing. And when you think about you're the founder of this company. You get to write your own story. What does it look like?
That's when you asked me this down at the downstairs before we started, I was like, okay, I gotta start thinking about this kid. But when I take a moment to kind of look back before I go forward, I want to say in 2018-ish, there was something that I had like an itch that I said, I don't know what it is, but there was something different that I had to do and something that I had to figure out, right? And I loved practicing and going to practices and was doing great there. There was no reason for me to shift or change, but there was something that I felt like I needed to do more. And through some help from mentors, advisors, business coaches, things like that, I really kind of honed in on my personal values at the time, which was inspire, influence, educate. And I wanted to do something to make an impact in the world of dentistry. But I didn't know what it was. And so fast forward now, I had no idea that this is what it was going to be, but it started with an idea. It started with an ecosystem, supports, all these things that fostered to where I am today. Great people on my team that have all come bring this, vision to reality, my co-founders, all these people, right? Going forward, I think the, something as a founder is that people take a chance on you, right? And whether that, I'll never forget, the first check that I got and, pretty much driving home crying in the car to when I got, the check. So for me to be able to go back to people like that and, shake their hand and give them a check back and then say, hey, then we got to, support and go back to somebody else, that's what I want my story to be in the future, because I think without them, again, I couldn't do this. I couldn't be parts of systems. I couldn't hire other people, build technologies, all these things too. So that's the future of my story.
I look forward to it. Amreesh, thank you so much. And thank you so much to all these incredible panelists out here today. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much.
We do have a couple of minutes for some Q&A. Oh, Jenny's got the cube. Woo! This is Jenny, Funding Catalyst Sales. We love you. She's got the cube. So we've got the ability here to take a couple of questions. So does anybody have a question for anybody on the panel here? Who's got a question? Oh, yeah. Okay, Matt, yeah.
Ooh, this is fun. I like this a lot.
Oh, it does work. Amazing.
Hi, I'm Matt. I work for a startup here in Calgary called OraQ. My question is, for those of us who are in the tech ecosystem, but not ourselves the front door of the tech ecosystem, or a fund, or providing support through ATB and others, what's one thing we can do to help support founders and the tech ecosystem here in Calgary and Alberta as we continue to grow it?
That's a great question. Thanks, Matt. Who wants to take that one first? Terry, you want to go?
Well, I think the starting point is that question. You ask the question, how can I help? Mm-hmm. And when we look at the lessons from the rainforest, which is actually the rainforest tree is down there, so all of the sort of principles from the rainforest are there, and that notion of free help or give first or just connect people. Like a lot of we think about generous connection, like just connect. Like don't gatekeep, don't, just make sure that people get connected as fast as possible and kind of let it sort out, There's ways to do that. But that's always if you go to things and connect people generously, that's the starting point. Any lessons that you can share and things like that are also super helpful. Sharing not how you want people to see you, but sharing what is actually going on, I think is part of it too.
Wonderful. Shelley, I bet you've got some ideas on how people can help, particularly women founders and underrepresented founders.
I love Terry's response, like that, being generous with your time, I think is just it's like a huge gift. And like I said earlier, that human capital and that financial capital, are on equal weighting. I think the other thing that you can do as founders is force the community, it might not be the right word, but drive the ecosystem to be a little bit more transparent and accountable. So, sometimes funds don't have a great reputation. Why is that, right? They don't take a cold call. They don't take a cold email, whatever it is. I think be champions of change for where the ecosystem can go and really sponsor and drive that change, I think is an extraordinary opportunity for founders because we're all here because of you. And so if you want to see things done differently, then make it known. And I think none of us should be afraid of raising a question or saying it can be better or critiquing something or why is that happening. Just be champions of positive change.
I love that. Anybody else want to weigh in on that one?
I want to throw one more thing out.
Yeah, sure.
Build a great company.
Yeah, right.
That's the other.
I think Amreesh is on it. Build a great company.
Yeah.
Do we have any other questions from the audience? Oh, way over here. Hello. Can we get a cube to her? Okay, Josh, throw it along or pass it down. Yeah, I would have passed it down also, to be clear. Hi.
Thank you. This was a great conversation. Something that I keep hearing at a lot of different events and from founders is that it's really hard to get customers in Alberta until you've gone somewhere else and validated and already seeing head shakes. So I think that's something that we all know, but how are you guys addressing at an ecosystem level, or how do you see that kind of how are we moving forward with that issue?
Yeah, customer acquisition. Who wants to take it?
Well, you go where the customers are. As a founder, you have to do that. So if you're getting better commercial adoption in a specific market, you have to go for it. But I would love to see more, customers in Canada, specifically, those that you could be selling to, become stakeholders in funds, like venture funds, become LPs, even if it's a small check, and then have some skin in the game around the commercialization and the output of those funds and what companies are creating. But yeah, as a founder, you got to look after your business and you got to go where the business is. And then I think extending explicit invitations to corporates and enterprises across Canada to invest in this asset class and have that skin in the game for commercialization is super important. So, yeah.
Thanks, Shelley. Amreesh, I'm a little bit curious about how you think about customer acquisition.
It's definitely an interesting question because yes, we have to go where the customers go. But looking at, it's tricky sometimes because as a proud Calgarian and Canadian founder, I want to build and stay here and I want to do these things here. At the same point, we know the huge market to the south of us is definitely something that we need to continue to tap into and continue to grow there. So how do you balance those things? But the market, back to I think the ecosystem and community piece too, it's so different because at times you go to other, if I go to an American city and talk to American customers and dentists that are maybe close to an innovation area, they want to adopt, they want to try things. The percentage of early adopters by just sheer size of the market alone is different than even going to our larger innovation centers like Toronto or Vancouver or something, right? It's not the same feel still. So, you want to build and you want to grow here, but then at the same time, you have to go where the market is because you don't have a lot of time as an early stage startup. You got to get to success to get to that next step. So I'd say I don't have an exact answer. I'm still figuring it out, but I think balancing it is with the approach that I'm trying to take. At the same time, we got to do what we have to do is best for the company, right?
Absolutely.
Can I
Terry,
throw-
you've got, yeah.
Two or three quick things. So the first thing is, it's an interesting. We did a whole podcast during the pandemic of Calgary-based companies that have never made one sale in Calgary. It was very interesting. Some very big ones that like Cool IT, no Calgary customers at all. Great Calgary company. Livestock water recycling, selling all over the world, not in Calgary. Even with that, I think she actually, I talked to her. She has a local customer now. But so the first thing is, it maybe doesn't matter. So if we're a great place to build a company, it doesn't mean necessarily that customers need to be here. And so great founders will do that. The second thing is, what are we doing specifically? Our PropTech Showcase is a good example of something we're using as a prototype to bring industry together in a curated way with founders based on vertical themes. And so we're going to be reaching out to the community and talking about pulling that together this year multiple times in beyond just PropTech. And then the second one is, we will be in the sometime near future launching a membership offering for industry. So that is something that we've only now tech companies can be members here, but we want to basically triple the size of this community over the next year and a half. And so that means that if industry wants a simple way to just meet the people and be there, we're going to try to create that here. So that's one.
I love it. Martin.
I like the Cool IT example,
Yeah.
and hopefully, just because Alberta's a natural place to do AI.
Right. Yeah.
You would think that that's going to change in a big way, right?
Yeah, I think they're just going to open the windows here, though, aren't they, to keep to cool everything? But.
Yeah, that doesn't hurt, right?
Yeah.
But there's a lot of humongous data centers in Texas.
Yeah.
So it's not the be all end all.
Yeah.
But really, like, cheap and abundant power is the key, right?
Yeah.
That's the key behind this whole massive economic, societal transformation that's just starting right now.
Yeah.
And it's amazing that Cool IT is a global leader and born right here.
Yeah.
Super exciting. I would also say that tell your story. Make sure your customers know about you. I'm a storyteller by nature, and so we've created podcasts, we do videos. Tell your story. Make sure people know you exist. And the ecosystem needs to know you exist, and then we all work together, and then we can champion these stories, and then we can champion these companies, and of course we can champion these founders. Thank you so much to everyone. That brings us to our time. Thank you so much for being here, everybody, and thanks again to our panelists. I've got a few thank yous I just want to get out there. Thank you to ATB, our presenting sponsor for season 2. We couldn't have done it without you, and they are in charge of all of this. They've even helped us get it videoed, so thank you very much to ATB. Also to Sandstone Asset Management and to the Opportunity Calgary Investment Fund. Our sponsors are critical to getting this podcast off the ground, so thank you to all of you. Also, thank you to Astronomic Audio. This is our production partner. They're based in Edmonton. If you're thinking about doing a podcast, you got to get in touch with these guys. Talk to me. I'll get you hooked up with Astronomic Audio. They're incredible. Also, thank you to Maven Media, Adam there in the corner, who is putting this together for us on video. Our event planner today, Aubrey Souliere. Thank you so much, Aubrey, for getting this off the ground. Platform Calgary for hosting us. And of course, my incredible team at Thin Air Labs. You guys, thank you so much for everything you do. And finally, thank you to our live audience here, and a huge thanks to our podcast listeners for joining us all season. Thank you for your curiosity and your passion for innovation and building what's next. Please join us into the West Hall for some food. Thanks to our local food, Ubuntu Eats. They've got some great little nibbles for us, so we can go and indulge. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for coming out.